Hello, and welcome to episode 21 of What If Civilization Started Over. For the next few episodes, what we're going to do is look a little bit at the old world, but we're going to look a lot at colonization because that's going to be the main theme of the next few episodes. So we're going to start that with this episode, and a few things are going to be happening in the old world. So a massive plague is going to spread throughout Indonesia and Vietnam, and it's going to evolve to become a lot weaker and less deadly by the time it leaves these two countries. So it's really just going to be Indonesia and Vietnam that suffer from it, and basically both of these countries are going to collapse. And for a very short period of time, they have absolutely no government at all. But usually, the old governments are able to reestablish control. So this is going to be a very quick thing because war on top of plague would be a very bad idea, and both countries realize that. So instead, let's just see what happens instead. And Indonesia has collapsed into four countries, like so. Their capitals will be here, the only major city in eastern Indonesia, we'll call it. Meanwhile, Vietnam will be more deliberate. Indonesia kind of just collapsed into the regions that were already kind of separate from each other, and the central Sumatran government just stopped being able to control everything else. In Vietnam, they're going to be a little bit more deliberate in how they split up their empire, because they actually, I keep calling them Vietnam, they're technically Thailand. They have a plan to basically eventually get the rest of their empire back. So instead, the thing they do is they kick out Malaysia because they think that's actually going to stop the plague. This is the only time they do something along those lines. This is supposed to be part of Vietnam. They actually think this is going to stop the plague, and their capital is going to be in Singapore, but I'm going to call them Malaysia. Then the capital gets completely destroyed by the plague. It's not destroyed as a city, but they decide to move the capital over here because they think it's going to be better for the plague. And they sell a little bit of land over to West China to make it dealing with the plague a little easier, but it doesn't actually work, as Thailand will be ejected from the empire again for the exact same reasons. Say the exact same reasons, I mean because they think that it'll stop the plague from spreading. However, it doesn't, as the plague starts to spread eastward as well as into Burma, as Burma will actually declare its own independence. Actually, the old North Burmese government that will take power here, and it's not actually, it's the descendants of them, but because it's their descendants, they're actually going to become a monarchy, and all of these countries are basically going to be monarchies. And then Vietnam itself is going to have a revolution, as their government just can't be trusted because the plague is so bad. West China is actually doing a really good job of keeping it down, and that's why it's starting to evolve out of being a bad plague. But basically, Vietnam's going to have a revolution. Color might be familiar to you, but Vietnam is basically going to become a monarchy, as a king will overthrow the theocrats of Vietnam. And we've got to put some more ideologies in, so let's quickly do that. The idea of a constitutional monarchy sounds really nice to a few countries. So specifically, the Vietnamese Revolution will establish a constitutional monarchy, as well as Eastern Indonesia. Okay. And constitutional monarchy in this world is not full democracy, as we're quickly going to see in Russia. There are actual democracies, but constitutional monarchy means the king I think it's called a semi-constitutional monarchy in real life, where the king has a lot of power despite there also being a prime minister, and the king can often overrule the prime minister's decisions. And so that's going to happen in Russia, as a decision is made to invade into Croatia. They just really don't like theocracy in Russia. And although theocracy has mostly been rid of the world, it's kind of what I tried to do in the last episode. Oh, and also, I forgot to mention this. A lot of countries have reverted to their original colors. That doesn't mean it's the original country. Like, China is the old government of North China. This is the old government of Central Yangtze. I just reverted them to their old colors for continuity's sake. Anyway, Russia will capture the capital of Croatia, and the country of Croatia will kind of go into free fall. So the Netherlands, who's a pretty close ally of Russia right now, will start invading, and Russia will divide up the territory. And Rome will also want to get back into the game, as they will start taking some Croatian territory, and the three of them will divide up Croatia. So let's see what it looks like. And just like that, another country has been removed from the map, so their ideology can also be removed. And Russia is starting to get into not just Eastern Europe, which they have all of, but now they're going into Central Europe as well. And a lot of countries, including Rome and the Netherlands, are getting scared of Russia, but Rome and the Netherlands aren't going to do anything about it. The dictator of the Netherlands will officially denounce democracy, which means that it's no longer a dictatorship pretending to be democracy. It's just a pure dictatorship. And I just realized I keep calling them in the Netherlands. Their capital is actually in Belgium, so I'm going to call them Belgium from now on. But yeah, that's interesting for sure. The thing with Russia, though, is that their population is unhappy with the half-effort nature of their democracy and how the king keeps overriding orders. Like, the parliament passes a thing that would basically let people in the newly annexed territories vote, and the king overrides it. The parliament tries to lower taxes, the king overrides that. Basically, people have started to have enough of Russia as a rebellion. The first rebellion against Russia, but definitely not the last, will happen in the former territories of Estonia, but only like the core territories, so like actual modern-day Estonia, not the former Estonian country. Unfortunately for this rebellion, they will be quickly crushed by Russia, but it's just a sign of things to come, as Russia will probably not be able to invade into any more countries, and we might be seeing the end of the Russian state. With that, I think we should quickly just do South African expansion, because South Africa was founded in the last episode, and they're already getting significantly more powerful as trade is actually starting to go through there. The first thing that happens is that slightly more exploration into the Brazilian jungles is conducted, as a lot of them are cut down in order for the rapidly booming population of the Brazilian country to be able to have places to live, as 2 new major cities pop up. And I think the threshold for major city is going to be, I said 300,000 in the past. It's probably more like 150 to 200,000, because that's ridiculous. But there's definitely about 500,000 people living here for sure, and they all probably live in cities. Actually, it's probably going to be even lower. It probably should only be like 50,000 for a major city. I think I've been inflating it way too quickly. Yeah, it's only going to be 50,000 from now on. Anyway, some of these other European countries are going to realize that they should probably do something. But mostly it's just going to be 2 of them, which are going to be Andalusia and Galicia, are going to realize, hey, there's a lot of opportunity to be had in the New World, which is also what they call it. We call it that, they call it that. As Galicia starts sending down their thing, because they figure Brazil's probably big enough to have land here, and so they discover all of this land, and Galicia set up a colony in northern Brazil, in which there will be 1 major city. And actually, I'm going to do the major cities of this area after this, because there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen. Andalusia will be trying to go, and let's be honest, they're probably going to discover each other, where they are relative to each other, so this area can be discovered. Andalusia will be trying to go around the Brazilian thing to come to the other side. They don't realize that there's this land bridge here, and they're actually going to end up landing in Venezuela. And Andalusia will make their own colony here in Venezuela. This is going to be a slightly smaller colony, but they're not going to be done because they still really want to find stuff, so they're going to discover the Lesser Antilles as well as the Greater Antilles, or at least some of them, as they fully colonize Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, and discover Jamaica as well as the southeastern tip of Cuba. And this episode takes place over about 50 years. But yeah, this is what Andalusia has discovered. And so Andalusia and Galicia are the first 2 countries to really take advantage of this, but as they do some more exploring and eventually discover all of this land. And Andalusia and Galicia will actually make a deal between themselves, dividing up this land over here between them. And a lot of this is going to be claims, so cities will show where people actually live, but I'm going to do cities at the end of the episode, since the rest of the episode is probably going to be colonization. A Britannian, which means from Brittany, trading vessel is going to be going to the Andalusian Caribbean, but they're going to wash up instead in the Lesser Antilles, and they realize that, hey, the Lesser Antilles have been discovered, but Andalusia doesn't actually claim them because they think they're useless, so let's claim them. And then I'm actually going to put a city here first, because this is going to be the first like really big city, as a large number of Britannian people start migrating to a city in the Lesser Antilles that starts to be used as a base, as they're like, hey, we can also start exploring a little bit more west, since these guys are focused on the east. And so they basically send a ship here and start exploring until they get to the Darien Gap. And let me do this on the right layer. So they start exploring here, but once they get to the Darien Gap, they realize they can't really explore any further. But a Britannian colony will be set up along the coast of Colombia and Panama, as some more discovery is yet to be done here. And this will spark Andalusia to ramp up their speed of colonization as they quickly discover the rest of Cuba. Unlike in our timeline, there's no people living here, so they're not committing massacres, but they do see the benefits of this. But Andalusia will quickly colonize all of Cuba, becoming the largest colonial power. And they will then, incidentally, happen to discover Florida. And they realize this entire continent might be insanely massive. So they start sending ships out in all directions. They discover the Yucatan. They discover the tip of Honduras. They also discover Louisiana. And one last ship will land over here. And they realize, oh my god, there's so much land here for us to colonize. And they start sending up colonies in all of these places. But a lot of these colonies aren't even going to be big enough to have a city. In fact, they don't set up a colony here, because before they can do this, Brittany beats them to it, setting up their own colony here. Meanwhile, Galicia is just focused on their Brazilian colony and exploring deeper into the rainforest, as they mostly are using this colony for logging, which has been very productive for them, as they quickly become the richest country in Europe. Brazil is also exploring, and Brazil is terrified of Galicia because Galicia is probably more powerful than Brazil already. Spain is kind of nervous about how much colonization Andalusia is doing, because Andalusia and Spain are kind of having a rivalry. So Spain will basically try sending their ships to colonize directly north of the Floridian colony, which is exactly what happens, as Spain will create their own colony over here. And they will do a lot of exploring into North America, exploring a lot of the southeast of the US, and colonizing it like so. While Andalusia is focusing on hopefully exploring all the land between these two colonies, which they finally do, as they claim all of this land, and there's no one else who claims it, which means they officially control it. Meanwhile, Brittany is focused on getting to the other side of the Darien Gap, which they do, as only the Darien Gap remains undiscovered. But they can send ships like through this passageway, which probably has a name, but I don't know what it is, as they colonize all of this land, creating a nice Central American colony for themselves. Aquitaine, which Western French country over here, doesn't want to be left out, so they will also create their own colony. However, they don't really know about North America, so instead Aquitaine will actually purchase a colony, as they are decently rich, so they will actually purchase their colony, and they will purchase the least profitable colony of all of them, hoping to use it as a base for the future. So as they purchase the Yucatan colony, the idea of Andalusia selling this is they can kind of hold Aquitaine hostage if they ever want to get to their Yucatan colony. But a lot of exploration will quickly be done by Aquitaine, as they make a dividing line between them and Brittany, as they don't want to go to war over this. And the Yucatan colony is getting very... Meanwhile, Brittany has been starting to explore the western edge of South America, as they have made a deal with Andalusia, dividing up the remains of Colombia and Venezuela. And England has an idea. They realize that the southern tip of South America hasn't really been explored very much, so they decide to send people all the way down to the southernmost parts of South America, and these are exploring groups that are not meant to set up colonies. But England basically is the only country that actually has knowledge of all of these discoveries they're making. And English people start flooding there, as the English monarchy is not very popular, and they just want to get far away from the crown. But they are still an English colony. They still pledge loyalty to the crown, so it's like, are you really sure this is the best way to do this? But the English colony will quickly become one of the biggest in the world. Scotland and Ireland then try the same thing. And we're just going to say the Darien Gap although they don't have anything there, they know it's there, so they know what's there because all that's there is jungle, and they know there's jungle there. So yeah, we're gonna say it's discovered. Anyway, Scotland will have the opposite approach of England, as they realize that the Spanish colony is not going as far north as it could, and so they decide, let's just go straight west. No one's tried that yet, and they discover basically Newfoundland and Labrador in Canada, like so, and they will colonize the entire island of Newfoundland as well as a large portion of the mainland. And Ireland will look at this colonization game and they want to get in on it as well, but they have a democracy, which is actually going to really hamper them because basically there's a party that wants colonization and a political party that doesn't. And the political party that wants colonization, they first win an election and they decide they are going to found a colony just south of Scotland's colony. So this happens in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. As this land will get discovered, like so, and Ireland will set up a colony here. However, then the anti-colonization party wins, and they immediately sell their colony over to Scotland. And then the pro-colonization party wins, and they basically demand that Scotland return their colony back. And so you can see why having a democracy during this time is not necessarily the most productive thing, when it's like a pure democracy like Ireland's and not a partial democracy like all the constitutional monarchies. And Scotland's basically just going to say no, and this is going to lead to the first colonial war between Scotland and Ireland, as Ireland will attempt to invade into Scotland, and England will then also start an invasion into Scotland. And Scotland is desperate for some help, so they offer to give their entire colony to Belgium in order to have them stop, which is kind of funny. So Belgium will take the entire Scottish colony, and then they just will be like, sayonara, and they don't actually help out Scotland, because they are the most morally evil country in the world. They are the only dictatorship. They are just a horrible country, not just to live in, but also to do diplomacy with, as Scotland is completely invaded by Ireland and England. However, just as this war is ending, the anti-colonial party in Scotland regains power, or in Ireland, and so they just basically say, hey, England, you want to buy the rest of Scotland off of us? And England's like, sure. Ireland will then become an extraordinarily isolationist country, as the pro-colonial party starts to lose power because they have no ability to actually project colonies anymore. But all of the powers of Europe then have a meeting and basically say, hey, we've all agreed on what each of our realms is. So, like, Mexico and the Caribbean and Venezuela, those go to Andalusia. Northern Brazil goes to Galicia. Eastern Brazil will go to Brazil for now, although we're going to try and get rid of the Brazilian state at some point. South America goes to England. Central America goes to Brittany. The Yucatan Peninsula goes to Aquitaine. North America is split between Florida and Spain and Belgium, and everyone agrees on that. So for now, there's not going to be any more wars over this. It was kind of the war with the colonial war over there is kind of why this happens, as Belgium is starting to explore further down. Spain is trying to explore further north, as this is the only one that's not really clear as to where the border is, but they know North America is connected, so I'm going to just show that they know that. But there basically is a race to claim the rest of North America. The rest of this area is explored, and a dividing line had already been made, which is wherever it becomes the thinnest between these two bodies of water. The rest of Mexico is going to be mostly explored and colonized. And we're going to keep checking in on these areas, but this is actually more of 100 years after colonization starts. So maybe like 1550, so like 60 years-ish after colonization starts. Things are going to look like this. The war between these guys happened around 1545, so very recently. But some cities are definitely going to start popping up, like so. The Galician colony, you might be like, why is it so profitable? And that's because it has a lot of cities, so it's like an actually populated colony with like actual people there, whereas the rest of them are kind of very sparsely populated, although the majority of like Andalusia's population is now in the colonies based on these major city counts. But that's actually because, first of all, there's going to be more major cities that start to pop up in every European country. The majority of Galicia's population is in Brazil, but that's the only one that is true for. England only has 2 major cities in their whole colony, like so. But that's because those major cities are barely scraping the threshold, and Europe, which is about to get way more populated, has cities that are way bigger. You might notice southern France doesn't have any colonies, and that's because Andalusia controls the Strait of Gibraltar. In fact, they kind of threaten Morocco, who wants to get in the colonization game, but they're just way too weak to do so. They threaten Morocco. They force Morocco to give up the rest of the Strait of Gibraltar, creating a territory known as Gibraltar, as well as the Canary Islands. And basically, Morocco is going to become a vassal of Andalusia. And this is technically happens within the next episode if we're going to go strictly chronologically, but I'm going to just show it as happening now. Morocco has fully become a puppet state of Andalusia. And Andalusia is now the most powerful country in the world. Simply, partially part of that is because Russia is very much on the decline, but also Andalusia has the most potential colonially. Oh, and one last thing, I forgot to do this. In India, the brown religion is going to start spreading. Part of it is the government is trying to spread the brown religion, but part of it is that it happens naturally. But the brown religion will start spreading throughout all of India, as the lime religion has become a very small minority religion. And therefore, a lot of people are going to start fleeing to North India, which we'll see a few new cities start popping up in North India as they get more populated. But also, a large number of lime religion people are going to flee to the Himalayas, which leads to the Himalayas being discovered, as 2 cities will pop up there. And after some other countries, and a new Himalayan country will pop up. Give me a sec. And here we have Tibet, one of the world's last theocracies, as theocracy is kind of seen as an outdated ideology in the rest of the world. But Tibet will found a brand new one. And a lot of the theocrats of North India can see that theocracy is on the way out there. And so the government of North India will actually move to Tibet, which means the weird thing's going to happen with ideologies. But essentially what happened is that the old government of North India has moved over here. However, there still is a theocratic government in North India. However, it has kind of lost its theocratic touch as it becomes a dictatorship. And in Arabia, okay, so theocracy is still going to be a thing in West Africa. However, over here, Libya and the Saharan country will merge into a single theocracy with Libya's government ruling it because they have very similar ideologies and they kind of want to be stronger against monarchies in the future. I'm trying to reduce the number of theocracies in the world because it would be unrealistic to have this many at this point. And then in Yemen will basically have this colony threatened, and they'll say just stop being and the Ethiopia, Somalia, and Eritrea will say stop being a theocracy, and you can keep it, and so they'll just basically convert to a monarchy. The leaders of Yemen actually wanted to become a monarchy; they were just looking for an excuse, and actually they asked Eritrea to make this threat, so they had a justification to do this. Mesopotamia has not really been a theocracy ever since the war with West Africa. Or they have been a theocracy, but it's been passed from father to son. And so it's kind of just a monarchy with theocratic rules, like kind of think Sharia law. But a monarch will kind of remove Sharia law or the equivalent, and so they'll just become a normal country. Oman will sell this land back to Persia because they're like, why on earth do we have this? That doesn't really make any sense. So there's 2 theocracies here. And the number of theocracies in the world is very small, being 1, I'm going to say this is a half, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5 theocracies in the world, which I think is a small enough number. So, yeah, with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!